What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Baseline Scoop. I'm your host, as always, Zach Ciavolella, here with my guys, Andy Quach and Justin Crosby. Guys, how are we feeling? We made it through. We are past the deadline. We are officially into the next phase of the NBA season. How are we feeling?
Kind of iffy. I mean, both our teams were kind of pretty quiet, made marginal moves between the Blazers and the Sixers, but I mean, the East got a lot weaker, so that's a bonus point for the Sixers for sure. Some good all-star news for Philadelphia because Joel Embiid looks like he'll probably get that starting spot now that Durant's out west, and Harden should slide in for Kyrie, right? Hopefully in the reserves. Was Kyrie?
Hopefully it looks that way. Yeah.
Or Jaylen Brown.
There in the East, and Jaylen Brown's out too. You know, so there's really no excuse for Harden to not be an all-star at this point. I mean, that's the really big kind of focus there, and you know that's something that I'm sure we'll kind of talk a little bit more about. But on today's show, obviously the huge big news, the NBA trade deadline, everything that happened. It's been a crazy. I guess you got to go back like 72 hours because it's been some time that some of these moves have been being made. So, we'll talk about some of that, some of the trades that have been made across the league, talk about what specifically the Sixers did at the deadline, and even past that, what they could potentially do, some early names hitting the buyout market. But as always, the Baseline Scoop is brought to you by La Touraine Watches, and you can shop La Touraine for affordable luxury watches. La Touraine Watches and Accessories offer timeless style and design without high prices or shoddy materials. Every watch they sell is backed by their 24-month warranty to protect your investment for years to come. You can pre-order the new manifest that is now open, and do not forget code BLS10 for 10% off. Now, where do we begin? Oh, I'm doing my Windhorse voice again. I've been getting the Windhorse comments lately, and I just hit up the Windhorse voice. All right, so I'm gonna try and stay away from that. But really, like, where to begin? Like, the best place to begin, like, there was the Kyrie Irving trade, obviously, but we already talked about that. We talked about that on last pod. So, Justin, the first trade after that was the Dwayne Dedmon trade, the Spurs sending cash considerations to the Miami Heat for Dwayne Dedmon and a second-round pick. What were your first thoughts when that pick kind of came out?
So when that trade came out about Dedmon to the Spurs, the first thing I thought was, well, one, I know he had issues with like Spoelstra a couple, I don't know if it was a month ago or whatever, so he might have worn out his welcome. But two, I said, oh no, Miami's trying to clear some space for something. That was the first thing that came to mind. So they're trying to clear some space for something, but then it didn't come to fruition for them, so it didn't matter. But that was like my first and only thought. And then I thought like, well, if Dedmon's going back to the Spurs and they have, Zach Collins and all these young guys, he could potentially be a buyout candidate for the Sixers. A couple years too late, but potential.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that it's not the ideal spot in his career where the Sixers could have him compared to the past. It's already been announced that he is being bought out by the Spurs, so he will be available for some team. Who exactly that is, I'm not quite sure. A lot of teams actually made moves to improve their backup center position, something the Sixers, did not focus on as much. So we'll see what happens, how the backup market, kind of forms. But the Sixers, I expect to be one of the teams in on Dedmon as we get a little bit closer to these buyout, deals becoming a reality. But a lot of buyouts. It's going to be a good buyout market this year. A lot of names. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but there are a lot of names that are going to be hit up in that. But, we also had the Kings deal, the lone and only Sacramento Kings deal. They acquired Kessler Edwards and cash considerations just for draft rights to David Nshanu. Well, that'll be the new, Ricky Sanchez for Sacramento, I'm sure. But they're thriving. Just without an addition. So I know there's some frustrated people in the Sacramento community right now. But after that, we saw the big trade with the Lakers. Now, this one was kind of confusing for me, at least. And when I say that, I mean, like, I don't understand some of the moving parts. So can anyone explain to me why the Timberwolves are getting Mike Conley?
Yeah, it's very weird. I mean, I look at it as maybe they wanted some familiarity with Gobert back, and I know Russell had started to wear out his welcome in Minnesota as well. So maybe they're like, all right, we'll get somebody that's comfortable with Gobert back, and more facilitation, less shooting. So and Edwards could just be and I guess whenever he comes back, could be the main offense, and they could just worry about that. But that entire trade was definitely some from head scratching stuff, and I can go over real quick just to start it off. So 3-team trade with the Lakers, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Utah Jazz. The Lakers got D'Angelo Russell from Minnesota, Malik Beasley, and Sixers rumored target Jared Vanderbilt from the Utah Jazz. Minnesota Timberwolves got Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 3 second-round picks. And then the Jazz got Russell Westbrook, who will likely be bought out, JTA with Juan Toscano-Anderson, Damian Jones, and a 2027 first-round pick. So when I first look at it, and I say, the Utah Jazz gave up all of that, and all they got was a first-round pick. Like, that was just very weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, obviously, Mike Conley's salary, it's kind of nice to be off of that, but, you know, to lose Malik Beasley, who's been one of the better shooters in the league, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think, had some value, and he's on an expiring deal as well. And then, obviously, Jared Vanderbilt on top of that, you know, to come out of that just with a first-round pick and a chance to buy out Russell Westbrook. I mean, I don't know. It's not for me. But, Andy, what were your thoughts on the trade?
I think that Danny Ainge obviously really values that pick from the Lakers. He's definitely hedging his bets that LA's downfall is coming soon. At least before, I think 2027 is when the pick is going to be relayed, which isn't a bad bet. It's probably better than, say, 2 first-round picks in the upcoming years from someone like the Denver Nuggets or someone who's supposed to be contending and probably won't have a lottery pick anytime soon. So that's a part of the deal. For me, giving up D'Angelo Russell and getting Mike Conley for the T-Wolves was about 2 things, and that's fit and contract. So D'Angelo Russell started off the year just awful, but he's picked up his play. But the worry is that he knows it's a contract year. He's trying his best to earn his cash of the summer, and that his play will drop off again. But instead, they get Mike Conley now, who theoretically is a better fit on and off the ball next to Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert. They already have that chemistry from their days in Utah with him and Gobert together. He's under contract for another year, and next year is actually only partially guaranteed. So if things don't work out, they can just let him go and save $14 million instead of having to pay Russell the summer or not have cap space and try to find an upgrade that way. So to me, it's actually a pretty smart move. Utah's part was a little questionable, but it could look genius if the Lakers end up giving up a top 5 pick in 2027.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one thing that you kind of have to hope for with this whole situation for Utah. You're right about the Mike Conley connection, you know, with Rudy Gobert. We'll see if that actually pays off for the Timberwolves. You know, the other thing that we really just have to see is what this team looks like when Karl Anthony Towns comes back. You know, that's kind of the whole, you know, crux, you know, of the issue, as it were. You know, you haven't really had to worry about the 2 bigs kind of confusing things for Minnesota since he's been out, and they've even at times looked a little bit better. But you know, the best version of the Timberwolves is supposed to be one that has Karl Anthony Towns in the lineup. So we'll see what happens with the Timberwolves long term there. But perhaps this is a move that could actually end up being better for them. Maybe not even this year, but perhaps even next year if they do keep Conley into that season instead of waiving him for the partial guarantee. But definitely a huge deal. I kind of got everything, kicked off and started. And then Andy, your Portland Trailblazers with a little sneaky move in there too, trading away Josh Hart. And this is something that Villanova fans were all over, right? So Josh Hart goes to New York, joins back up with Jalen Brunson. Oddly enough, Ryan Arcidiacono heads over to the Portland Trailblazers in order to get this deal done for salary. What were your initial thoughts with that deal?
I mean, I'm probably one of the biggest Cam Reddish supporters left in the NBA circles, so I was happy with it. It seemed like a bit of a fumble not getting Isaiah Hartenstein or addressing that backup big spot at all. I mean, Hartenstein is basically forced to get minutes by the front office. Tibbs does not like playing him, does not utilize him well. So I feel like that could have been an easy part of the negotiation, but for whatever reason, it wasn't. But ultimately, this move was about getting that pick. At first, people theorized that it would be used in a later move during the day. Turns out it wasn't, but I'm actually happy getting the pick. Cam Reddish and whatever he does end up providing is definitely gravy, but this upcoming draft is going to be pretty important for Portland, especially if they do end up making the playoffs and relaying their own pick to the Chicago Bulls and opening up their future first round picks to be traded. So it gives them a leeway to get an additional young talent on a rookie contract deal during Dame's prime. And this draft is actually super deep at their biggest position of need, which is a two-way wing. Just taking a look on Tankathon right now, the Knicks are projected to be right at that 18th spot, and some of the people that are mocked right around that area include Anthony Black, Dariq Whitehead, Gigi Jackson, Chris Murray, Terquavian Smith, Maxwell Lewis, all of which would just be a wonderful fit, not just for the long term in their young core, but even alongside Dame coming off the bench, learning and growing and playing a smaller role. So overall, I'm happy with it. I know a lot of people aren't because they don't believe in Cam Reddish. I believe in Cam Reddish. I think the path is there for him to take the starting three spot for the Blazers. Everything that he was supposed to be coming out of high school and college is everything the Blazers need. With their limited assets, you kind of have to take these, low cost, potentially high ceiling swings. And if it pays off, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I wonder, and this is, I guess, kind of the beauty of having the pick is this a pick that you see them trading on draft night, potentially? I know you mentioned some of the prospects who can help. I think that would probably be my assumption is that they would look to trade that, perhaps for one of these players that wasn't dealt earlier today. There's going to be a lot of those veterans on leftover contracts. Doug McDermott with the San Antonio Spurs, for instance, is a guy that is still remaining in his original team, guy who could really benefit, alongside a player like Damian Lillard. So, again, that's probably the ideal nature of the trade is the fact that you have that optionality. But I think that's something definitely to watch for Portland come next year's draft, the 2023 draft.
Yeah, definitely. The front office has Dame's remaining prime in mind, so it definitely wouldn't be surprising to see them flip that pick for a win-now player. Personally, I would just keep it and add a young wing on a good contract. But that being said, they've almost never done what I think would be best, so I definitely would bet on them trading it in the offseason.
Such is life. The next big pick was Jakob Poeltl going to the Toronto Raptors and Kem Birch going to the San Antonio Spurs along with a 2024 first-round pick in 2 seconds. Justin, so Toronto did not sell at the deadline. They got a brand-new starting center. What's going on in Toronto?
Okay, I think Masai, now that I think about it, I think Masai was pump faking the whole time. He was just pump faking the whole time. He was supposed to trade. Well, there was rumors that, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, basically everybody in the starting lineup was available for trade. And then instead they decided to get Jakob Poeltl, which they did need center help. A real center, because Birch and Boucher just aren't, good candidates there. and they say that, okay, Kevin Durant's out the East. The Nets are basically out of, contention as far as championship. Maybe we could put a little run together and make it to the second round or something like that together with this group. And when you look at some of the matchups that they will play, they'll play, like possibly they play the Sixers where they'll have a better matchup against Embiid, even though Jakob Poeltl wouldn't necessarily stop Embiid from doing anything, but just they wanted more size because Toronto is made up of a bunch of 6'8", 6'9", athletic guys besides, Trent and Van Fleet. So, this adds a true center to their core, and I still believe that at the end of the day, during draft period in the summer, you'll see some of those guys like OG, be traded, for picks and assets that would happen during that time, because draft time, we all know draft night is another big time when a lot of transactions happen. So I think that will happen then, and then I think they're just like, whatever, we didn't get what we wanted. They did the same thing with Kyle Lowry when he was supposed to be traded, and they didn't get exactly what they wanted, and they let him walk. So I think it'll be the same situation here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think the pump fake was real in Toronto. Just the kind of situation where, hey, if I can get one of these crazy deals I'm asking for, I might take it. But otherwise, I think the Raptors did get markedly better. I think that they noticed that the East got weak, and kind of like you said, now they have that chance to possibly even make a little bit of noise in the Eastern Conference. So it's definitely. I mean, it surprised me, but those Jakob Poeltl rumors were there for some time for a reason, and sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So the biggest trade of the trade deadline, obviously, came late last night. Kevin Durant, no longer a member of the Brooklyn Nets. And that is, I mean, it was not unexpected. It was just unexpected that it happened when it did. All right. There were some thoughts that perhaps at the deadline you'd see Kevin Durant on the move, but I think by and large the feeling was that he was going to be moved in the offseason if he was going to be moved at all. After all, the Nets did bring in a player who he's a pretty big fan of, and Dorian Finney-Smith. When they did trade away Kyrie Irving, seemed very much that they were trying to kind of appease Kevin Durant by that, but it appears it didn't work, or the Suns just had clearly an offer that Brooklyn was satisfied with, and it's a pretty good offer. Mikal Bridges, Cameron Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 first-round picks, a 2028 pick swap. Brooklyn would eventually go on to flip Jay Crowder for 5 second-round picks, which was a running theme during this trade deadline, was 5 second-round picks. But it's a pretty solid deal, and it's a good deal for Phoenix, too. Obviously, you get Kevin Durant, by far the best player in the deal. TJ Warren is a sneakily good addition to this deal for the Phoenix Suns. And then you just all of a sudden just launch yourself right back into contender status if you're Phoenix. But I got to ask you, so Denver's been the team that's dominated the Western Conference so far. The Dallas Mavericks have added Kyrie Irving. The Phoenix Suns have added Kevin Durant and TJ Warren. Each of you guys, who do you have coming out of the West now?
I got to stick with Denver. I mean, Kevin Durant obviously is huge. You're obviously going to get better anytime you add an all-NBA talent. But the fact of the matter remains that they didn't really address any of their needs. Their depth actually got weaker. Kevin Durant is a great scorer, great isolation scorer, but they don't have anyone that puts any pressure on the rim, which was their number one gripe on offense, is no one could get there to collapse the defense. And I mean, KD can collapse the defense in different ways. He's going to draw doubles as soon as he takes a step inside the arc. But not having anyone that can get to the rim, not having any depth behind them, and having some of the most, injury-prone stars in the league, some of the most aged-out stars in the league, I at least wouldn't say that they're the runaway favorites like everyone was knee-jerk reacting as when the trade went down.
Yeah, I think the injuries are kind of the big point for me. As far as the depth goes, I think it is important to point out Jay Crowder was not playing. Cameron Johnson was just coming back from injury. So as far as that immediate feeling of loss of depth, I don't think they're really feeling that at the moment. As long as TJ Warren stays healthy, which is a big ask, as long as Kevin Durant stays healthy, which again is a big ask, it's probably going to work out fine for him. But yeah, you're right. They're going to have that injury cloud just kind of hanging over their head over the entire time. And, I think that would be part of the reason why some people are thinking a little bit more in Dallas's favor, that if anyone's going to overtake Denver, it may actually be the Mavericks. But Justin, what do you think?
So first I want to say, Chris Paul, when's the last time he's been healthy for a playoff run? Let's really talk about it. He's one of the most often injured stars in his league. And it's always his hamstring or his quad, lower body, whatever, that limits his ability to really be effective for his team on both ends of the floor when it comes to the playoffs. Now, hopefully he got hit with the injury bug earlier this year, so hopefully that's out of the way and he can play better. But even last year, you could tell something. I mean, I know he was injured last year, and you could just tell he just wasn't himself in the playoffs. And I think that's the key here. You could talk about Kevin Durant, who has been a little injury prone as of late. TJ Warren, of course, he's been out for 2 years. But when you just look at this, and D-Book, he's relatively healthy. This was the first long injury probably for him in a long time, or maybe it was a career. But Chris Paul, who's supposed to be, and I know you have Kevin Durant, but you got CP3 running the show. I think this is something where you really have to look at the engine of him and how he's going to be able to hold up. Now, also we know that the big trades at deadlines, sometimes you just don't have enough time to put it together. Now, I'm not saying they won't go to the finals, but for me, I'm looking at them as maybe putting it together, maybe doing a Western Conference run, but I don't think they're going to go to the finals. I just think it may be a lot to try to put it together on the fly. That don't mean they're not the most talented, right? But they might not be able to put it together. And honestly, I'm not really sold on Denver either. They're really good. Jokic is really good, but to me, Denver is ripe for an upset, specifically on the defensive end. I just think that they do have Aaron Gordon, they do have KCP, but those are really the only defenders that are going to make a difference for them. So when you have 4 or 5 really talented guys offensively, it's going to be tough for them. So right now, I think it's up in the air. You could say Dallas, but their defense isn't going to be that good. And I mean, you can go back and say, okay, the Clippers are getting healthy, but their offense stinks from time to time from ISO ball. So, they fall into the same mode that the Sixers get sometimes when they just turn an ISO ball and it just slows everything down. So I really can't tell you who wins the West. But it's so wide open, but it'll be interesting to see it play out.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's going to be a fun Western Conference battle. That's the thing, is that the West seemed just overly disinteresting, I think, this season. I mean, I think the Nuggets were certainly interesting, but kind of when you got after that, you're looking at Luka Doncic kind of play 1-on-15, against the other teams. You were looking at the Phoenix Suns, who were just kind of not going through the motions, but due to the injury bug, just constantly falling short of their own expectations. Utah Jazz flash in the pan after Zion got injured. The Pelicans kind of just fell into the gutter. Not a whole lot really. Going great for the West, but now, yeah, you're going to
even talk about Memphis. You even talk about Memphis. For sure. Memphis lost 9 of 10.
Yeah,
yeah. What's going on?
Once the news came out that they were stat padding Jaren Jackson Jr., I think that things kind of got a little bit iffy for them, and then just Memphis is a weird situation, man. I mean, just all that off the court stuff too is just, and I don't really know what to think of Memphis, going forward. So, we'll see that they added Luke Kennard. We'll talk about that briefly in just a little bit. I think that's a really quality addition for Memphis. So, they're another team who's going to be at that top. They're currently in the 2 seed, of course, but it's a much more interesting Western Conference than it was a few days ago. So, I think that's something that's just kind of good for the league as well, because the Eastern Conference, you have. The Sixers, you have the Bucks, you have the Celtics, of course, leading the way. The Cleveland Cavaliers are another interesting team. So that there's there's at least teams at the top that are going to make this interesting. And it's nice now that there are multiple teams in the Western Conference that you can say the same thing about. But kind of moving on, there are a couple small trades. Mike Muscala going to Boston for Justin Jackson and 2 second-round picks. Thomas Bryant going to Denver for Devon Reed and 3 second-round picks. Now, both cases, you got these teams that are kind of solidifying the backup big role in a way, and especially Thomas Bryant to the Nuggets. Like, these are solid deals for both teams, and I think Mike Muscala really fits in for what the Boston Celtics are trying to do. Exactly what they accomplished against the Sixers just on Wednesday. So I like both these moves for both of these teams. What I do like about these moves for the Sixers is that this kind of takes them a little bit out of the big man market for the buyout situations. So guys like a Dwayne Dedmon, who, as we mentioned, is already being bought out. There's rumors about Nerlens Noel being bought out as well. That kind of stuff is just something that I think there's a little bit more hope for Philadelphia for. So, I like those moves for Philly. But then another move that I really like for Philly is, of course, the big move of the day for the Philadelphia 76ers. Matisse Thybulle going to the Portland Trailblazers. Svi, somebody help me out with this. Mykhailiuk?
I think
Did
it's
I get that half right? Mikulak. Svi Mikulak, 2 second-round picks going to the Charlotte Hornets. And this deal, I have heard so many variations of this deal. So this is what ESPN currently has for it, is what I mentioned so far, and then Jalen McDaniels and 2 second-round picks going to the Philadelphia 76ers. So there's just a lot of moving parts in this deal. But at the end of the day, the Sixers appear, and I say appear because, again, there have been multiple different reportings of what the compensation's been. But Jalen McDaniels and 2 second-round picks to Philadelphia, I think as far as a singular Matisse Thybulle trade, this is beyond the best that could have been expected. I mean, you're looking at a player in Jalen McDaniels who is actually a two-way wing. He's still a young enough player that he can continue to develop. Now, he is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. However, you do have the potential to bring him back. And unlike with Thybulle, I think there might be a desire to attempt to bring him back to Philadelphia. And then on top of that, you are increasing, the draft compensation or at least making it a little more useful. You're losing the 2023 pick that was Charlotte's. That was a huge pick, obviously. But getting the next 2024, and is it the other pick? Is it Portland's 2029?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean those are picks that as time goes on, can be super helpful to the Sixers. We saw how important second round picks they were treated as unimportant, but at the same time they were used in almost every single trade at this trade deadline. So it's nice to kind of. They're not really restocking so much as kind of punching down the road a little bit as far as recouping those second-round picks, but I'll still take that. And on top of that, Jalen McDaniels is an excitable young player. But, guys, what was your initial thought to the trade? What was your big takeaway from it as well?
I mean, just off the bat, I think the Sixers got the best value out of that 3-team deal, turning a pretty flawed Matisse Thybulle into someone who could theoretically be your 7th man in a playoff rotation, and tacking on an additional second-round pick was pretty good work from Daryl Morey there. Of course, Jalen McDaniels also has his flaws. He's shooting like 32% from 3 right now, but at least he's willing to score. He'll look to score. He won't be ignored the same way that Matisse Thybulle was. Even if he's not hitting from deep, he is a threat as a roller, as a cutter. He's shooting 52% from 2-point right now. So if they can get that 3-point percentage up, even a league average, he'll definitely be a valuable member of that rotation. He can also guard bigger players, unlike Matisse. He's about just as active in the passing and driving lanes, at least he was last season. There's been some regression from him this season, but I think you can say that for about just any player who played in Charlotte this year, except Mason Plumlee for some reason, who thrived. But yeah, I kind of think they got a mini steal in that one, especially if he can hit 38% from 3 like he did last season.
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, I think it's a theoretical upgrade over Thybulle. as Andy, already mentioned, offensively, potentially defensive. He's not as good defensively as Matisse, but he is longer, can affect more shots, and kind of plays more straight up defense instead of, I won't say purposely, but purposely getting beat so you can get steals and blocks from behind. That was kind of a part of Thybulle's game. One thing when he get those, shot goes up, try to get the block type situation, and that worked for him a lot, and it also got him in trouble a lot as well. So it's like you live and die by that. But I mean, I think with the assets that the Sixers had, this is kind of one of the things they could do. As we talked about while we opened the podcast off the air, that Keith Pompey just wrote that the Sixers were 95% done a deal with Dallas, but their insistence on adding a first round pick, having Dallas send back a first round pick in the deal, kind of stalled the deal. So they went and moved into another direction. That's how they got Jalen McDaniels. I'm just interested in what that would have looked like, and would it have been, a Reggie Bullock, or would have been. And if it was Reggie Bullock, clearly it would have to be other players added for salary. But if it was JaVale, and then that's why they wanted the first rounder. So it's just interesting. But I think for the Sixers, for what they had asset-wise, I think they did well enough to where they upgraded a spot where they felt like they wanted to upgrade at. And, we just hope that, going forward, I do think that them getting those 2 second-round picks shows that in the future, right, again, as Zach said, they are important, but they're not important, whatever. But at least they have something. Them losing those draft picks to the tampering for P.J. Tucker and Daniel House, that kind of hurt them, because if they had 3 or 4 first-round picks today, maybe we would have seen a different outcome, as you see, right? Like Eric Gordon, we can talk about that later, got, I don't know, maybe a 4 or 5 second-round picks for him. So it's just interesting as far as that, but I do think they theoretically got better. I'm interested to see how he fits in the lineup and what he plays for. And then I just think that the buyout market is going to be where they try to fit. I'm just, with this trade in particular, I think it's good for the Sixers, but I don't want to say disappointed, but I just would rather them address the backup center spot with a trade, and maybe try to find a wing in the buyout market. But then, hey, maybe I'm wrong, because there's a bunch of centers that's about to be in the buyout market, so maybe they felt that was better. So
yeah, I mean, I think that definitely was a factor. I mean, you look again, like I mentioned, Dwayne Dedmon's already there. Nerlens Noel, Keith Pompey reported if he was not moved, which he was not, he would potentially be there as well. Serge Ibaka's there. DeAndre Jordan is there, and I don't know. I shudder at what I might do if they bring DeAndre Jordan back, but he is one of the names there. We'll get to some more of the names in just a moment. We're kind of running up against it, but I want to run through just a few of these trades, as well, and then just get quick hits on who you guys think the winner of the deadline was. So the Milwaukee Bucks received Jay Crowder. Indiana Pacers, this is a 3-team trade, got George Hill, Serge Ibaka, who was then bought out. Jordan Nwora, 3 second-round picks, while the Brooklyn Nets got 2 second-round picks. Then in a steal of a deal, the LA Clippers got Bones Highland for 2 second-round picks. That is all. Then the Atlanta Hawks in an absolute, there's no two bones about it. This is.
And I know that we're going quick, but I have to say, I want to know the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like, why he was just last season like one of their key contributors, and all of a sudden they're punting him out the door. Like, what happened? That's all I want to know.
Something he had beef with Jamal Murray.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Jamal Murray called him out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that one day we'll find out, exactly what it was, and we'll get all those details. Maybe he wasn't a Mike Malone guy. We'll find out. But Atlanta Hawks, they received Garrison Matthews and Bruno Fernando from the Houston Rockets for Justin Holiday, Frank Kaminsky, and 2 second-round picks. I think Kaminsky and Holiday could both be bought out theoretically. Then finally, you have Sadiq Bey to the Atlanta Hawks, James Weissman to the Detroit Pistons. Makes absolutely no sense to me, but they believe in Weissman. That's pretty clear. Warriors get Kevin Knox, 5 second-round picks, and save a heck of a lot of money against the luxury tax those second-round picks, they actually turned into Gary Payton the second, right? Gary Payton, not junior, he's the second, right?
Yeah, there's actually a Gary Payton Jr. as well, who's his brother. So he's the second.
Okay.
But there's a junior.
So, but he's really the third Gary Payton because his brother's Gary Payton Jr.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't have enough time in the day for that one, but we're gonna go on to the next trade, which was the Houston Rockets getting Danny Green, the LA Clippers getting Eric Gordon. I feel like something missing from this trade on ESPN. Clippers getting Eric Gordon, 3 second-round picks, rights to swap, and then Memphis Grizzlies getting Luke Kennard. Great deal for the Clippers. Great deal for the Grizzlies. And then for the Rockets, just unloading some money. That's always great as well.
Come
they're
home,
be
Danny.
To buy out. They're going to be looking to buy out Danny, and I think he'd be welcome with open arms in Philadelphia. But they're looking to buy out at least John Wall and I believe Danny Green as well. Then moving on next, you have Josh Richardson going to the Spurs for Devontae Graham and 4 second-round picks. That's probably 2 seconds to pick up Josh Richardson and 2 seconds to take on Graham's contract. But that's another solid move for the Pelicans as well. Now, I am noticing that this list does not have every trade because there is also the Mason Plumlee trade where and this is part of what gets to what you mentioned earlier, Justin, about if the Sixers had second-round picks. If you look at the Mason Plumlee deal, they traded Reggie Jackson and a second-round pick for Mason Plumlee. And the Hornets are set to buy out Reggie Jackson. So theoretically, having, matching salary to a degree, closest you could come would probably be like House and Korkmaz. And say you included the 2 second-round picks that the Sixers had to give up because of the tampering case, then, yeah, you're looking at a case where Mason Plumlee could perhaps come to Philadelphia. But let's real quick take a look, guys, who do you think the winner of the trade deadline is if you had to pick one team or one player?
I mean, it's the Phoenix Suns. I mean, they got Kevin freaking Durant. That's it. They might not win a title this year, but there will be a contention going forward with Kevin Durant on there. So that's all I say who the winner is.
Okay, I'll pick outside the Suns. I'm going to go with the Lakers. I mean, they went all in. Respect to Rob Pelinka. I mean, he literally flipped the entire roster. They shed Thomas Bryant, which at first seems like a huge loss, except they replaced him with Mo Bamba for basically nothing, who might be better and a better fit. Going back all the way to the first Rui Hachimura deal, and then they also got Vando, Malik Beasley. I mean, it's crazy. It might not work out, just like it didn't work out when LeBron and the Cavs flipped their entire roster of role players in 2018, but at least they're going for it. We don't really know what the drama with him and AD is right now, but they at least look better on paper, and they're at least showing LeBron that they're willing to do something. A lot of teams don't have that luxury of being able to say that. I mean, the Trailblazers' big swing was Cam Reddish. The Sixers' big swing was Jalen McDaniels. So I'll say they're the winners, at least for today.
Yeah, I think that there's, an argument to be made there. And whether or not LeBron does stay or leave in the offseason, I think you're right that they made a good showing, one that they have to be proud of, the attempt that they made there. And on top of that, a lot of the players that they brought in are on the younger side. So these are players that they can retain. They can re-sign D'Angelo Russell if they want. Jared Vanderbilt is going to be here next year. The same exact thing for Malik Beasley. And then on top of that, they have the rights to re-sign Rui Hachimura on top of that. So, this was a good move, or a plethora of good moves in the short term and the long term. For me, the team I got to look at, and then, yes, obviously the Suns getting Kevin Durant, that's a major move. But the LA Clippers, man, I mean, just so much that they did. Adding Mason Plumlee, adding Bones Highland, adding Eric Gordon. I mean, that is a pretty solid flip as well for the limited assets. They didn't have a single first-round pick that they could or that they ended up moving off of. So to get all that done, I mean, yes, losing Reggie Jackson does hurt. They're going to have, I think, Russell Westbrook walking through those doors any minute. Now, whether or not you think that's a positive or a negative, I'll leave that up to you. But the thing I like to focus on is that they have Bones Highland who can kind of fill in that role in and of himself. So I think that they absolutely knocked this one out of the park, the Clippers, and they're my winner. Again, I do think the Sixers, what they did was impressive considering what they had. I do think they could have done more at the end of the day. That's my only thing there. So the last thing that we're going to do, just super quick, I have a list of some confirmed buyout candidates and some potential buyout candidates. Rapid fire, I just want to hear you guys say yes or no if this is someone that you have interest in the Sixers bringing on, okay? Nerlens Noel.
Yes. Easy yes.
Yes.
Dwayne Dedmon.
Maybe.
It's a no from me, dog.
So I've heard it reported that Rashawn Holmes will not be bought out from the Sacramento Kings. However, it is still a name people like to talk about. So I will say Rashawn Holmes.
No.
A million times yes. What?
Oh, okay. Very interesting. Actually, I got to say, Justin, I slide a little bit more on your side with this because you're looking at a guy who's still a little undersized. I just don't know how much he has left in the tank. At the end of the day, I'd probably say I would do it. There's just there might be names on this list that I would have a few different names I would have a little bit higher than him. Guy who's probably going to get bought out, Terrence Ross.
No.
Yeah.
I'm cool
I think
with
after getting Jalen McDaniels, I don't think there's any reason to get Terrence Ross. Before getting Jalen McDaniels, I don't think there was a big reason to get Terrence Ross as well. I think, you mentioned Dwayne Dedmon, that being the move 2 years ago. I think that's kind of the thing with Terrence Ross, too, is that there was a time, but that time has since passed. In addition to that, guys we have to talk about just because they're available, Russell Westbrook. I mean, it's not going to happen. I don't think it should happen for Philadelphia. That's the same way that I feel about John Wall personally. That's just me.
No.
No to either of them. I like John Wall a little bit more for the Sixers and Russ.
I do agree.
If Russ can play his 6-man role in Philly, I think that'd actually be nice, except Philly doesn't really have the shooters to help him thrive. Yeah. But, it'd be fun. Be interesting.
That's a word for it. Another San Antonio Spurs big man, Kem Birch. Is that someone who we're thinking that Sixers might be interested in, or would you like to see him on the Sixers should he be bought out?
I would say yes.
I'll rank them Rashawn Holmes, Nerlens Noel, Kem Birch.
Okay. So once we get past it, we got to talk about Serge Ibaka. Does anyone say yes to Serge Ibaka other than Doc Rivers?
No.
Fashion photographers.
Okay, good. It's a good answer, Andy. It's a well thought out answer.
How hungry are you? That's what I say.
Yeah, you gotta be starving. I love Serge, man, but it's not. We're past that time. It's just another one of those guys. All right, let's get into some of the really good candidates here. Here's one. His name was thrown out real quick on the buyout market. It's barely been talked about since. It's kind of a surprise name, and that's one Kevin Love.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that's a no-brainer. I don't know that he would come to Philadelphia. I actually think the Portland Trailblazers might be one place that he would try and go. He's an Oregon guy. But I would love to see and the Lakers, I mean, obviously, let's just keep that, 100. You go back to LeBron and the Lakers, he would definitely do that.
He wouldn't be any type of rim protection at all.
No.
But rebounding,
sure.
Stretching the floor,
sure.
Something different. I would take Kevin Love.
These are good things. Andy, what were you saying?
His outlet passing would be a big help in transition.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't get my hopes up on Kevin Love.
No.
I follow a few Cleveland guys, and by all indications, they think they're going to keep Kevin Love. He's a great locker room guy.
Well, that would have been my expectation until I read that report that they were considering it. But again, that's just a consideration. That's not the same thing. And Love really has proven himself as a leader. I guess it really just comes down to how much he actually wants to play or how content he is just in that leadership role. Because with the return of Dean Wade, I know that his role has significantly decreased. So we'll see. Again, I do agree, Andy. That's someone I wouldn't hold out hope for. One of the last guys I got on this list, Will Barton, going to be bought out from the Washington Wizards. He's a year away from a quality starting role with the Denver Nuggets. How do we feel?
Yes, for the regular season. No, for the playoffs, because he will get cooked so bad on defense.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of players. I feel like we gotta, when we got Marco Bellinelli, he's
So
a guy.
I'll say yes.
Like,
I will say I would just leave it at yes.
He wasn't out there like the glove, but yeah, I think I would agree on Will Barton. I'm a Will Barton guy. I've always been a Will Barton guy. I've loved him at all his previous stops as well. It's just kind of a bad situation in Washington, but I'm happy to have him there. Andy, any last thoughts on Will Barton?
I think he's kind of like Josh Richardson in that every team that trades for him thinks it's going to be the answer or has interest in him. He hasn't been moved as much as Josh Richardson, obviously, but like everyone thinks he's going to be the answer, and then he doesn't really move the needle at all. I think he's pretty washed, but I wouldn't be mad about it.
Yeah, I mean I just think it's better than some of the other options. Like when you look at the top names, like assuming that you have Kevin Love on that list, I think it's Kevin Love, I think it's Will Barton, I think it's Nerlens Noel. And I think it's Dwayne Dedmon, personally. I still think that there is a little bit of a player in there. I know what you guys think, but I'm going to stick by Dwayne Dedmon until I am proven wrong. And I have a feeling that things just did not work out by the end of Miami and that he's going to prove himself. And I also feel that is the most likely candidate to come to Philadelphia. But then again, Nerlens Noel, if he does get bought out, it was Boston who was reportedly interested in him. They just got Mike Muscala. That limits the Nerlens market. So it seems like Philadelphia is going to be primarily competing with Miami, and we'll see what happens. But for now, that has been the summary of the NBA's trade deadline. What a mad few days it was, but we made it through. We and the Sixers are stronger for it, and I just can't wait to move on from here and see what happens between now and the end of the season. But as for now, I've been Zach Ciavolella with Andy Quach and Justin Crosby, and we just hit you with the Baseline Scoop.